plans for complete streets with bike paths and trees. And I went to a meeting about that, and I asked them, what will it take to do that? And they said, well, we should have done that 30 years ago, which I found not helpful. But I think any new development, other places where I've lived, if a developer wants to build on a main road, they have to widen the road, or else they don't get to build. And I think we should be looking at that, at developers and making them as the infrastructure and working on a mass transit system.
The roads in this county are certainly in poor shape, and they're only going to get worse with the expansion of WVU. They're building various buildings, which is going to bring more students to this county. And the unfortunate thing about the poor roads is that if someone gets a flat tire, they have to pull out $100 from their wallet, which could have gone instead to a phone bill, to a car payment. And it's a drag on the economy in this county. So definitely addressing the roads is a huge priority. And unfortunately, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to do so because right now we're facing a $270 million shortfall in our budget. So it's hard to find the money. And so what I propose is taking out a bond, because it's really going to be difficult to fund the road. So we need to address the problem as soon as possible and put it behind us. Thank you.
We need to understand that roads are utility, much like power is. You pay to be on the power grid. You're taking from something, you've got to put a little skin in the game. Same way with roads, if you want to be out on the grid that are streets, you need to pay into it. You need to pay for the damage that you help to incur. And with fuel efficiency on cars, I mean, it's just skyrocketed exponentially since about 1994. That was the last time that we addressed the gas tax. It's a funding problem. People need to be willing to put more skin in the game. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to have bad roads. In terms of how do we do it, we need to put every single option on the table. One idea, which I was a huge fan of, was a vehicular tunnel that would run under Grumbines Island, just to the north of us there. That would reduce traffic so much. WVU could have a nice green space across. Professor, you could have class out there some days, I'm sure, and meanwhile there wouldn't be traffic congestion. We need to think outside the box, similar to the idea that I was talking about earlier with mechanical concrete. We need fresh ideas in Monongalia County and in West Virginia to solve these problems. Thank you.
I'll have to agree with John and Nancy, the fact that we have to be progressive with these problems. The reason we're in the situation that we are is we operate backwards. When we have a budget shortfall, what do? We cut taxes. What are taxes? Taxes are revenue. Revenue pays for everything. You know, they want to cut from education, which is the one entity that's supposed to produce our best and brightest. The roads, they take them to the schools. I guess if we don't have the schools, we don't need the roads. But that's not an answer for me. You know, Nancy brought up the food tax. I would have to agree that bringing it back would be a good solution. I think 5 years would be a little long. My proposition would be bring back the full 6 cents over a 3-year period, 1 cent every 6 months. Also, in some states, they if a vehicle is brought in to be used as a work vehicle, say a large truck or a piece of equipment. If you notice in the state of West Virginia, when folks bring those in, they've got tags from Texas and Oklahoma and all kinds of other states. They don't license the vehicles in our state. They don't have them inspected in our state. Well, other states have solutions to that. They have stickers for businesses that bring these vehicles that they have to pay into, and it goes towards the roads. I propose that we also do the same thing in West Virginia. I'm one person that's very tired of corporate welfare. That's something this current legislature is a big fan of. I want to cut it out.
Well, everyone realizes that we have a problem with the roads, and everyone realizes it's going to take the additional revenue to fix them. I absolutely would not revisit the food tax. That would place an unreasonable burden on working families and senior citizens. I would not support that. But I would support an increase in the gasoline tax of 5 cents, of at least 5 cents, which would help solve the problem. And also, since most of the damage to our roads is caused by heavy trucks, I would propose additional taxes on heavy trucks. And also, I would like to give our cities and towns the right to regulate truck traffic within their city limits. So if we don't have a problem like we have in Morgantown with these heavy trucks rolling through town, busting up our city streets.
Investing in our infrastructure is one of the most important things we can do to support the economy, to make sure we have jobs. But it's not just about roads. There's different kinds of infrastructure that are really important. One, for example, that we need to find a solution for is to get high-speed internet into more and more rural areas. It's something that will help kids do their homework and keep up at school, and also help businesses decide they want to locate here to improve quality of life. We need to think about water infrastructure. One of the things that I do professionally is work with public water systems all across the state, from McDowell County all the way up to Wheeling, to make sure that our drinking water stays clean. And we work with MUD here in Morgantown. And in Morgantown, we're blessed in a way to have MUD because we have a well-funded public water utility. We have a growing population with enough people paying into it that we could maintain and improve our drinking water infrastructure. But that's not the case in many communities across the state, especially in some of the smaller communities and some of the shrinking communities. So there's some real challenges we need to address with water infrastructure. Now, in terms of roads, that is a big issue. I don't want to minimize the importance of that issue. And it's not just about paving the roads. When I was out at the Core Senior Center a few weeks ago and talking to people out there about their big issues, they were concerned about ditching the roads and cleaning out the culverts, things that were done routinely every year in the past, but they're not seeming to have done that. And one of the roles of somebody in the House of Delegates is to advocate on behalf of their county. And one thing we need to make sure, because we're sending a lot of our tax dollars down to Charleston, is to make sure that we're getting a fair share back here to deal with our infrastructure issues. Now, one bill that wasn't mentioned was actually a bipartisan success story, and I'll get to that one later. So time's up.
I think that everybody's kind of touched on some of the issues that I was thinking about talking about, except for the fact that right now, part of where we are with this budget crisis that we're in is because there's an ideological difference between Republicans and Democrats. A lot of Republicans think that you should never raise taxes, even when, and we are in the trouble we're in, not just because of the food tax, eliminating that, but also because we lowered the corporate rate, and we eliminated the franchise tax, and because of what I think John was talking about, the fact that the fuel efficiency changes. Well, you add to that, and that's a good thing, but you add to that electric cars, which are more and more popular. They're not paying hardly anything on a gas tax. And one of the things we probably want to move toward is basing a tax for roads that's on usage. We should measure how many miles people drive, and that, because otherwise it's not fair. I do think that it's really important to be talking about public transportation and to make sure that gets paid for. And then I'm not sure what Evan was talking about was we did pass legislation that would allow counties to pass a 1% increase in the sales tax, which of course would be a tax, and that would be something we'd have to vote on in a referendum. Well, I noticed when I was in Charleston that their roads are really good, and I think they should be in our state capital. I think our roads are embarrassing. I think our roads look like a third world country, but they have a 1% tax, sales tax there, and they also have the wage tax. They are somehow able, and So we're going to have to pay for it. We do not have some Fort Knox in Charleston that we get our utilities for free. And we're going to have to invest in our roads. We're going to have to invest in our broadband, so that, you know, and those things are going to cost money, and we have to recognize that.
Thank you. For the next round of questions, I'd like to begin with John Williams. And the question is, lots of politicians talk about economic development broadly, but fail to offer specific vision for achieving growth. Can you outline specific plans you have that will drive the economic development or job creation?
Thank you. I do have specific plans, but one thing, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to speak about the issue broadly. Specifically in West Virginia, how might we make this a more attractive place for a business to be? It's not RFRA. It's not an English language bill. It is equal housing for the LGBTQ community. It is recognizing members of the LGBTQ community as a recognized group. We need to be progressive, be someplace where where a company knows that I could get employees to move to the state. I can be successful in my recruiting efforts. That's task number one. When speaking in specifics, something that I'd like to do would be to give a tax incentive to companies who bring their business to West Virginia, with the one catch being we will use already existing environmental footprint metrics that the company must meet in order to qualify. I want to incentivize clean business in West Virginia, technological companies, clean manufacturing, things that we can be proud of, the jobs that we provide for West Virginians, but also be proud of the environmental impact in which we create. Thank you.
So I believe that we can lower taxes as much as possible. However, if the labor supply is not here, businesses will not come. And one way to address that is to, as many of my fellow peers have said, is to bring broadband to the state. Broadband can increase a business's clientele if you are in a brick and mortar store. With the advent of telehealth, we can improve healthcare across the rural parts of the state and allow people to receive healthcare from their homes. And we can invest in our youth and work to close the homework gap, because education is one of the most important things to invest in, and allowing our kids the tools necessary to achieve their maximum education output will certainly help to move the state forward.
I think we're very fortunate to live in Morgantown because we have an economic job-creating engine here, which is the university. And to get good people to come to the university, we have to make sure that they're paid well, and we have to make sure that their insurance and retirement is up to date. And one of the things that didn't happen in the legislature was fixing the Public Employees Insurance Agency so that people who are employed by the state are not faced with higher premiums and less health care and retirement. That also goes for the school district. I'm a great fan of public schools, being myself a retiree from a public school district and having a sister, a mother, and a grandfather who were school teachers. So I'm very much in favor of public schools, but you need to have them and pay the teachers well, because to have a university that works, people have to have a place where their children will go to school, and they're not going to put up with crappy schools and just go somewhere else. And I think that as far as the rest of the state, I don't know that much about it, but I do know that there's big changes, that to have a little tiny town with one coal mine and maybe 50 people who work there, that's not going to be very viable going into the future. And I think we have to find ways to help those people, to either employ them as the federal government wants to do, to clean up some of the mess from the mines, or to find some new business that could go there. I think as far as Morgantown goes, we have to just support what's already here.
I'm going to expand on that a little bit, and I think that we really need to
start looking at the future of solar power. We have the opportunity in West Virginia to bring solar power, which is very clean, into our state. Many of us live on the top of the hillside, and many of us could put windmills up, solar panels on our homes. Living out in the country like I do, I have 100 acres that we could probably put 25 of those big windmills and be able to light up our entire community. So we need to think outside the box, and we need to start bringing high-tech solutions to West Virginia. And I think that solar energy, training for people into the next century on new technologies that are available is the number one thing that we need to do in order to make that happen.
I think that there are two things that we can do, and once again, it's going to involve, at least one of them is, well, they probably both involve money. But I think investing in education and training is key. And one of the things that I don't hear talked about very often is healthcare. One of the wonderful things that happened as a result of the Affordable Care Act is we have $638 million with an M dollars coming into our state every year for healthcare because of the Affordable Care Act. And we have people that need nurses, need doctors, need occupational therapists, need physical therapists, and those could be our people. We could be training people. We could be retraining people who are into new jobs. And I guess I'm going into the next area, but it seems to me that coal miners who are on a mine safety team or who have been a medic in Vietnam or in Iraq, that would be something we should be thinking about. Even though it's non-traditional, it might be a good field for people to think about going into. The other thing is, I don't think we should be thinking so much about somebody coming in here and rescuing us. We need to support our small businesses because that's where ideas happen and grow. And we've got a lot of creative, resourceful people in West Virginia, and I don't think a lot of times they know about the resources, and that's in part because we don't publicize them. They may need help with, like our law school, we have a clinic for entrepreneurs. They may need help with patents, and so they don't get ripped off. So I think there is a lot more that we could do for small businesses, and I would support doing that.
I was at a conference at WVU a couple weeks ago, and Senator Rockefeller was speaking about how Toyota came to West Virginia, and he tells a story about how his family had personal connections with the president of Toyota, and that's basically how they got here, through his efforts. And I bring that up just to contrast it with how most jobs are going to come to West Virginia. Most of us don't have personal connections with corporate leaders in other countries, and what we're going to have to do is similar to what I did. I created a small business, 12 jobs from scratch. It takes a good idea. It takes a lot of work. It takes persistence and problem solving. And like Barbara said, there are things that the state government can do to support entrepreneurs and to make it more possible that you'll succeed. One thing that's not going to work is to just keep cutting the state budget and funding the local governments less and less. That's just going to dig a deeper and deeper hole. We need to make smart investments, and smart investments pay off over time. And they're the types of investments that we've talked about a lot already today. It's investing in infrastructure. It's investing in public education so we have a trained workforce. It's investing in programs to reduce the impacts of the drug epidemic. And it's investments in quality of life so that businesses want to locate here, because that's one of the major factors that corporate leaders look for. If they're going to be bringing people into work, hiring people in a location, they want to know that they have good parks and good schools and a vibrant arts community. They want to know that there's going to be things for people to do after work, to have fun and enrich their lives. So all of those things are very important in terms of creating jobs.
what's being said about nurturing local business, especially by Evan and what Don Gallen has done here in Morgantown. One thing that always seems to come up when we talk about attracting a new business or at the industrial level is tax incentives, and we're pretty poor right now, and I'm not sure we can have a lot of tax incentives to pass around. But the Gateway Computer Company, years ago, located in South Dakota, and that's about as far as far away from anything that you can get. And West Virginia seems to be better situated than South Dakota in the center of these industrial markets. But that being said, the road to economic development begins with roads. And of course, West Virginia needs to stop neglecting its infrastructure. The major companies are not going to locate in the state with a poor transportation system or poor schools that repeal their educational legislature that repeals its educational standards for math and science and passes unsafe gun freedom laws and passes freedom to discriminate laws and some and then things of that nature that are going on in Charleston this past session. But the one thing that I would advocate perhaps would be vacant land is something that the state might be able to do is to develop an inventory of vacant land that the state owns that's not suitable for parks or recreation or any other type of development and offer that to companies who would be willing to locate it. Is that right, Carl?
Government can facilitate, but government can also deter. We saw the RFRA bill legalize hatred, legalize discrimination, almost came to West Virginia. We see what's going on in North Carolina and Georgia. People running for the hills. Not running for our hills, but if we elect thoughtful, free-thinking people, there's quite a few of them up here, we can create a better environment for our small businesses. One thing I'd like to propose is a payroll tax credit, looking at what the living wage is, what the living wage would be in West Virginia, and go to our local businesses and our West Virginia-owned businesses and offer them a tax credit to bring wages up to a living wage level, allowing them to be competitive when they hire with these big corporations, and also allowing their employees to invest the money that they make back into the local economy. We can't do this, like Rodney said, without improving our educational standards. Like Barbara said, training our workforce. People have to want to come here. We can't make them come here. West Virginia is beautiful, but what this current legislature has done to it has not made it so attractive. Economic growth starts with people wanting to be here and to come into our borders. We're the only state losing population. So we have to improve our roads, improve our education before we can ever worry about who's coming here. They have to want to come here.
Thank you. The next question will begin with Barry. And this time I'll read the question with my glasses on. Okay, thousands of workers in the coal industry have been displaced and are out of work. How can our state best address this problem?
This is a hard thing because there's big economic change that's happening, and some of it's inevitable, and we have to do the best we can for the coal miners. I would like on the federal level to change the law that allows companies to declare bankruptcy and get rid of pensions and health care that's been promised to mine workers for life while they give their CEO a $2 million bonus. That's a disgrace, but I think that's a federal issue that we need to address. And I would again refer to Mike Penny, who's running for Congress, to ask people to vote for him. What we can do, there is a federal program that's to reemploy mine workers in repairing the land. And I don't think the states accepted it. I don't think Shelley Moore Capito was too happy about it, but it seems like that would be a start to do that, to employ people to help rehabilitate the land that's been trashed by the coal industry. I think it's going to be very hard for people to stay in little towns in rural counties. That hasn't happened any place else in the country. Every place else, people have moved into the cities and suburbs. What they would need is broadband access, small businesses, people who get an education and want to go back there. And I don't know if we can really do that. I think our best bet is to go with rehabbing the land that's there for them, trying to get everybody the pension that they work for and their health insurance.
We have so many displaced workers. I really have thought about this very hard, about how we're going to be able to turn around an entire state, and especially doing it within a timely manner. Well, prior to people losing their homes, having no way to put their students or their children through college. The disruption of the coal industry was devastating to the entire state. And so for us to be able to put together a plan that is going to be able to be implemented quickly and be able to be sustainable and be able to put our families back to work and be able to send our students to college, I can tell you it's going to take more than just I. I am not an engineer, I'm an educator. That's the field I work in. And so I think that by having a very diverse legislative committee where each of us has our specialty, each of us has our strengths, I think that that's what we need to do. We need to be able to have somebody who's familiar with job creation, someone who knows how to be able to put that educational piece into that, to train the people that are going to do that. Someone like Barbara, who's had many years of legislative opportunity to be able to help us write the bills in order to make these types of things happen. It's going to take all of us working together in order to be able to really address the displacement that's happened throughout the state of West Virginia. I'm sorry that probably is not the answer that most people want to hear, but I cannot do that by myself. I don't think that I'm qualified to say it's going to take A, B, C, and D. It's going to take a lot more than 5 of us even. We need to have an entire team put together. We have many people sitting out in this audience that have specialties. We have many college students that are looking at engineering programs, that look at building and construction. So we need to be able to pull together a team statewide in order to help us manage this situation.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I had a plumbing issue this morning, and I have a wonderful person who helps us when things break in our house, and he was talking about the situation with his son who works in the coal mines still. And there are plenty of mines around, but he got transferred to another mine, and he had a $10 an hour pay cut, and he's building a new house that's probably soon going to be beyond his means. And it really is a tragedy. People have had a middle-class way of life, and they have truck payments, and they have house payments, and they have to leave because, they aren't going to be able to afford their current way of life. So whoever said it's going to take a while, I guess that was you, Nancy, I think it is. And also whoever said infrastructure could be part of the solution. I mean, a lot of coal miners know how to build things because they build structures within the mines. And if we are building out our broadband and our roads, and I mean that's kind of what brought us out of the Depression. We had building programs like the CCC worked on stuff like that. So I think we need to look into farming, and that's really excites me, and we have more farm to school stuff. But that's not going to replace the incomes that coal miners have been lucky to have and aren't going to have in the future, given the direction that coal is going. So I think those are some things that we can work on. But I think infrastructure would really be. We're sort of going in circles: education and infrastructure, and we're going to need to invest in both of them.
We're seeing lots of coal companies go bankrupt, and this is having huge impacts on coal miners and their families, and retirees, and people and families who work for the support industries. So it really is a serious crisis. But compounding it, and it is the fact that we knew this was going to happen so many years ago. And I think back to a report that I co-authored back in 2010 that looked at the projections of coal production in this part of the country and in West Virginia, and the coal production was projected to fall off greatly over the next few years, and it did. And it did because of mechanization, and because the easiest to access coal seams are being mined out, and because of competition from cheap natural gas, competition from other coal basins where they could mine the coal cheaper, and competition from solar and wind. It's getting more affordable year after year. So we knew this was going to happen, and part of the tragedy is that state leaders weren't being honest with people over the last decade, and they were making it seem like if we could just change the administration in Washington, that all our problems would go away. So I think one thing that's really important in terms of addressing this issue is to be straight with people so that we can solve the right problems. Now, there are federal programs that are providing millions of dollars to coal communities that are impacted by decline in production. There's what's called the Power Initiative, and there's $40 or $50 million that are available across the country. And we're involved in some proposals, others are as well, to draw as much of that money into West Virginia as possible so that we could use those to do job retraining, to create new economic opportunities. But it's going to take more than just money from the federal government. It's going to take all the things that we've already talked about, investing in small businesses, infrastructure, and education.
Well, this is coming from a coal mining family. This is a subject that is near to my heart. My father and both grandfathers and 5 uncles were all coal miners, and my father lost his job in the 1950s. He was a track man in the mines, and they brought in the continuous miners, and they run on wheels, and so you don't need a track man anymore. But there are different solutions to this. Of course, finding alternative, if you definitely want to try to save coal and put miners back to work, and find alternative uses for coal, and they're working real hard at the Morgantown Energy Center to do that, to find alternative uses and develop clean coal technology. But I think the solution comes down to vocational education in these areas where there's high unemployment from mine layoffs. And I think you expand vocational education in those areas, make it free, try to find jobs for these folks who have been laid off from the mine. Talking about alternative energy, if I have some more time, share an anecdote. Years ago, we had a coal gasification plant proposed for the western end of the county, and the German and Japanese governments were involved, and the Gulf Oil Company, and I got egg on my face because I wrote an article for the Statesman's Yearbook talking about this plant, and then Reagan came into office and canceled it. So who really started the war on coal? Not a Democrat.
this issue hits very close to home for me. Like I said before, my dad retired from federal too, and his pension and health care and all of his colleagues are under attack. I agree that we have to change the bankruptcy laws. I agree that we need to open up vocational programs for job retraining and certifications. I agree with all of that. But being in a coal mining family, watching some of these families, watching the plight of the working man, it's part of a bigger issue. We have to set higher standards. I read an article just the other day that the current legislature, the next session, their goal is going to be to repeal the minimum wage. They're trying to tell us that by repealing the minimum wage that these companies are going to want to pay us more. It's a joke. It really is. But it's sad. They think it's serious, and they think that that's what they need to do. Trying to control a little bit of my emotion here. But there's people in this audience that grew up in a generation where their parents and grandparents worked flipping a burger or making a sandwich in a kitchen. They worked in department stores. They cleaned restrooms. My grandmother was a janitor. But today we have a Walmart economy. We have regressive people passing legislation making it okay to pay somebody a mere wage they can't even afford food or a roof over their head. The standards have to change. We have to pay a living wage. Is it subhuman to flip a burger? Is it subhuman to clean a toilet? Are we above that? Maybe it's not that our coal miners don't have the skills to go do something else. Maybe it is us as a society, we have to change our viewpoint of what a respected profession is and what a living wage should be.
This is a problem that has been around for so long. I was watching a C-SPAN documentary on the Staggers Mollahan election in 1990. What an exciting life I lead. It was talking about the biggest issue of that election was the stark decline in West Virginia's coal industry. That was 26 years ago. Here we are still just kind of, what are we going to do now? I mean, we haven't addressed it for so long, and that's what's so sad about it. People talk, my counterparts on the right, they talked about, why don't you give us a chance after you drove the car for 4 years? It's not the Democrats' fault. It's the fact that we let big industry and big business own this state for so long. And now we have to take it back. And now we have to help the people who got knocked on their butts because nobody cared about them except for what they could do for the coal company. And now we need to help those people. And that is job training programs. There's a wonderful program in West Virginia called West Virginia Women Work. That's for women. It's something I'm a big fan of. It helps with an issue of mine, which is the wage gap. But similar programs could be started for workers of both genders who have been displaced in the mining industry. Margaret talked about how we got out of the Great Depression. FDR put people to work. And then a nice byproduct of that, you don't drive through a pothole when you leave here. We improve our infrastructure. We have a nice park system, things of that nature, while putting people to work. It's a problem. Thank you so much.
Well, first off, I believe that we should be able to preserve what is left of the coal industry. And because these people are the ones that power our homes and put their lives on the line to allow us to live the quality of life that we have. And I think that we should really be doing everything we can to help put these coal miners back to work. I believe that there's something called political motive asymmetry, in which one side of the aisle believes that everything they do is full of love and they're right, and the other side is full of hate and everything that they do is wrong. And I believe that everybody here can come together and rally behind this issue and help put coal miners back to work. We should lobby the federal government for extra funds to put coal miners in various vocational training programs and really just do our part to help out of our coal miners. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, start with you. fracking has brought jobs to the state. On the other hand, it has been linked to earthquakes, drinking water contamination, and other environmental concerns. Under what circumstances would you support fracking?
I would support fracking as long as we can ensure that people's lives are not in danger, their homes are not in danger. Because right now there's currently a crisis in Flint, Michigan, in which they are undergoing water contamination, and that is certainly something that we don't want to happen in this state. So we need to ensure that where fracking happens, it happens in a safe and responsible manner. And I am primarily motivated by job creation, and this is something that has been a boon for our economy, and which has created jobs. And we should certainly not stray away from it. We should do what we can to make sure that we do it in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Okay. I'm against fracking completely as it is now. There's no way to dispose of the waste that fracking provides. This was a thing that was set up by the Koch brothers and the energy industry to say that we can't do any research into it, we can't regulate it at all. It's just happening. It's bad enough here. I've been great friends in Greene County, Pennsylvania, which has been completely ripped up by fracking and well pads and an explosion at a well pad. And I travel a lot. I've been visiting all the counties within 300 miles of here in alphabetical order. So I went to Belmont County, Ohio, which is near St. Clairsville. It's on the Ohio River, and it's also ripped up. They're just roads through the woods. They just chop everything up. They dump their waste wherever they want. They have trucks. There's no regulation at all. It's just, I don't know. I think it's horrible, and there needs to be regulations and safety factors put in should have been put in before they let them start, but that didn't happen. And I was at a doctor's office the other day, and the technician told me that she had moved. She likes to live out in the country, but she works here. She lived in Greene County, and she and her husband couldn't stand it there anymore. They moved to Garrett County, Maryland, because there's no fracking in Maryland. And you can see the difference when you go into Maryland, how much prettier it is, how much more beautiful, and how much more you would want to go and do recreational stuff there. So I'm against it completely at this point.
And I'm going to second that. About a month ago, there was an opportunity to go out to Blacksville where they were holding a community forum on fracking. And so I thought, what better way to go out and learn a little bit more about what's going on. When I walked into the building, what happened is that before I was allowed to proceed into a chair, I had to give them all of my contact information. That kind of made me just a tad bit suspicious. So they informed me that if I didn't, I couldn't sit down. So obviously I provided them with the information. But what I heard really had nothing to do with the actual process of fracking. It had to do with them trying to convince landowners that they were going to be able to be their source of a great retirement. What they were trying to do is convince people that fracking was the answer for the future. However, there was no defined plan on how that was going to happen. So for 1.5 hours, I listened to the salesman try to convince them that fracking was going to be their way out of the situation that we're in here in West Virginia, out in the Blacksville area. People kept trying to ask questions about how are you going to do it? How far is it going to be from my home? How close is the closest water source? There were no questions that they actually answered. And the next thing I know, they start bringing out contracts. They're trying to get people to sign contracts without all the information. When those are the type of meetings that are being held by local fracking companies that are trying to convince West Virginia property owners to sign over their property in order for them to make a profit, questions were asked about, what am I going to make? What am I going to gain? Well, we won't be able to really clearly define that until we can actually determine how much we pump out. Well, there has to be a dollar amount. Every place we go, there's a standard. We pay $2.09 for a gallon of gas. So if you're going to be fracking on my property, how much are you going to set that rate at? You don't say, well, it depends on how much we pump. So I am not knowledgeable enough in the actual fracking process. I am totally convinced that we're not prepared to do this. As we are looking at fracking, New York State is running away from it. They've seen those results. They've seen the damage it's done to the property. They've seen the damage that it's done to the water system. So until we come up with a better source of information, define rules and regulations, I'm absolutely opposed.
Well, I'm going to stand up, and I can't believe all of you have sat here this long without wanting to move around. I invite the rest of you to, I'm going to move around a little bit just because I'm getting stiff. I hope you all stretch. Mike Mannypenny is back there, and he and I were involved in the fracking wars a couple of years ago. We lost. And we fought our hearts out to try to make sure there was enough money for inspections, that there were safety protections on the job, that surface owners especially had their rights protected. The way our laws in West Virginia is, and please move around. I mean, I appreciate that you are so faithful and sticking around. And the only thing I can say about fracking is things aren't going to change until we change faces in the legislature. They went after Mike big time. He's not there anymore, and I'm very, very sad about that. The way our law is with the surface owners, say, for example, the gas is going to be drilled here, and there's a person here whose family 50 years ago or 100 years ago gave away their surface right. The gas company has the right to use reasonable means to get the gas underneath the surface owner, which means they don't have to pay anything. They can put the drill rig right on that surface owner's property. It's awful. And we do have it right over in Wetzel County. It's totally torn up in the next county over. It sort of starts over there by the western end of our county, but we have to have a lot of different people. People are afraid in the legislature that this is an industry that could, that we have a little Saudi Arabia under West Virginia, and it could be the solution to all our problems, and that if we do regulate it, that we're missing an enormous opportunity. But there's a very influential person in town who leaned over to me at a Rotary meeting and said, Barbara, that gas has been there for thousands of years. We don't have to bring it up right now. So things would have to really change in the legislature to do very much about fracking.
Part of the work that we do is test people's drinking water wells, and we've had lots of opportunities to test wells to document water quality before fracking has occurred, and then from time to time we get called in after fracking in order to document whether pollution has been caused. And in some cases it hasn't, and in some cases it has. And I can think of one case in particular on the Doddridge County line where a family lost their drinking water well due to bad handling of the fluids from fracking. So anytime you hear somebody just claim flat out that fracking never has polluted people's drinking water, that's just flat out false. It's happened right here in West Virginia. Another thing related to fracking in West Virginia and Pennsylvania is that we got out ahead of the science. A lot of fracking started to take place in the late 2000s, and a lot of the basic science hadn't been done in terms of the types of pollution that could occur and what could be done to prevent it. And that means that even though the laws were changed when Barbara and Mike were in the legislature back in 2011, and they were upgraded substantially, they're still not necessarily as protective as they need to be in terms of setbacks and other types of standards. So a lot of research is continuing. People are publishing peer-reviewed articles on what they learn. So the science is evolving, and we need to make sure that we pay attention to that science and that the laws and the regulations that are in place keep up with the science so that if fracking is going to occur, it's going to be protective of water and other resources. We also need to make sure that whatever laws and regulations we have in place are properly enforced, and that's a big issue in West Virginia. even though we have more inspectors now than we did 5-10 years ago, it's not necessarily enough. So companies need to be held accountable for what they do in a consistent way so that they decide it's in their interest to do the right thing.
I love answering this question because I've had some personal experience with fracking, and I have an opportunity to share an anecdote. A few years ago, when I was still assessor, probably around 2012, we had two gas wells drilled across the river in the industrial park, and the ladies on my third floor computer room began coming to me to complain that their computer screens were vibrating. Not all the time, but just occasionally. So something we kind of kept an eye on, but on one occasion, someone felt the entire the building was vibrating, and it evacuated the entire courthouse. But these ladies had some computer savvy, and they found a website at the WVU Geology Department that connected them with the seismograph that was in this building at that time. And they noticed that each time that their computer screens began vibrating, that the seismograph was showing seismic activity. So it would appear that there is some connection between earthquakes and fracking. But at any rate, I believe that I support fracking in most cases. Shale gas is essential, has become essential to West Virginia's economy, but only in cases where there is no threat of damage to people, life, or property. And I feel that the people doing the drilling should be required to post sufficient bond to cover the costs of any damage that they may cause to surrounding property.
Fracking and oil and gas related legislation is inherently flawed in the state of West Virginia. Barbara started to get into a little bit of the battle she fought, and actually sat in Mike Minniepenny's office and absorbed knowledge. If fracking could be done cleanly, efficiently, employ West Virginians, pay a good wage, and be a career, I might sign on. But as I sat in Mike Minniepenny's office, there was a gentleman, I can't remember who it was, that said, they're telling everybody we have 100 years worth of gas, natural gas, shale gas. And that's what everybody was running with, 100 years, 50 years. You were hearing a lot of numbers. One thing that Mike and this gentleman pointed out in that office were they weren't talking about 100 years worth of jobs. They were talking about 100 years worth of shale gas. The gentleman in the room said we'd be lucky to have 5 years worth of that boom, have jobs, massive amounts of jobs. He was right. As our coal miners are laid off, many of the people that worked in the oil and gas industry that are from this state, that pay taxes in this state, are laid off. I support industry that employs West Virginians. No more corporate welfare for those wanting to bring their employees from out of state. If you want what we have, you employ our people. Our greatest resource is our people, and they deserve a fair wage and a fair opportunity.
It's something important to lay out a few things that come to mind. It's important to recognize that we already sort of went through, we've seen what a natural gas boom looks like. So it's important to recognize that natural gas won't be the silver bullet that it's portrayed to be. And secondly, even if it did create this long sustained boom, as Billy points out, it's a finite resource. Once again, we're going to kick the can down the road, and politicians and policymakers are going to be having the same kind of conversation in 80 years. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to retrain all these natural gas workers? And we need to find a more permanent solution to that. Secondly, this has been indicated too, it's an industry that is great for Texans, great for Louisianians, and great for Oklahomans because that's who come in and work the jobs. If we are going to commit to it, if we do decide as policymakers that it is something, then I think we do need to make it so that West Virginians can at least be employed within the industry. From a water point of view, the study which I'm the most familiar with was the EPA study conducted last June, which came to the conclusion that there is evidence of water contamination, but when it has happened, it's not widespread and systemic. It's rather localized from where the fracking was occurring. I think we need to approach this situation with balance, okay? And part of that balance is ensuring that fracking is paying its dues to West Virginia, and those dues being paid in the form of severance taxes. Severance taxes that we may collect so that we may have a strong DEP to regulate the industry, to ensure that bad things aren't happening in these wells. And at the same time, perhaps if we can employ West Virginians, if it's done safely, then let's go ahead and do so.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're running out of time, so I'm going to pass over the last of our long questions. We move on to the lightning round. In this round, the rules change a little bit. Each candidate has 10 seconds to answer, and the questions themselves will be structured that ideally this answer would be yes or no. So at 5-second point, you'll see a yellow card, and at 10 seconds, you'll see a red card, and it'll be my job to make sure everybody behaves. And I'd like to start with Mr. Smerka. First question. Do you support repeal of Senate Bill 10, which bans dilation and evacuation in second from abortions?
I'm against the Senate bill. I support the woman's right to choose. It's the right thing to do.
I was shocked when they ran this bill, and particularly I was left feeling disappointed, particularly with the having no exception for cases of rape and incest. I think that's egregious, and I would like to take another look at it. Thanks.
I would support the repeal of this bill. I believe that politicians should stay out of the operating room and leave doctors to do what they know best.
I support the repeal of this bill.
I support the repeal.
I voted no, and I think it should be repealed.
I think it should be repealed.
I support repeal. Abortion is a decision between the woman and the doctor.
All right, second question, we're going to begin with Mr. Evans. And second question is, should West Virginia add sexual orientation and or gender identity to the State Human Rights Act?
We need to be a welcoming state, so yes, we should.
I can't understand why the legislature refuses to do this. I think that definitely should be added to the law. I think certain legislators down there who would like to see gays get beat up.
We saw that everyone was welcome, and I truly believe that we need to be inclusive, not exclusive.
Yes, we need to welcome people, accept people. So many people, I get frustrated as someone who does go to church, I get frustrated when Republican legislators use the Bible for completely wrong purposes. In my interpretation of the Bible, I don't think Jesus, if he was a landlord, would have thrown someone out because of who he loved. Thank you.
I believe that we should be an accepting state, and I would like to add these to the State Human Rights Act.
Yes, both sexual orientation and gender identity, absolutely.
I agree, yes to both.
I sponsored the this bill for years, and also I would point out that the Senate passed it 3 times. So if some of these progressive-minded people here would just join me, we might be able to get it through both houses and get it signed by the governor.
Thank you. Barbara, we'll start with you for the third question. Do you support the repeal of the right to work and our restoration of prevailing wage?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes, both.
I support repeal of the prevailing wage, but not right to work.
Most certainly, I would support the repeal of right to work and the reinstatement of the prevailing wage.
We must repeal right to work, and I want to reinstate the 2014 calculation of prevailing wage before it was messed with in 2015 and then repealed this past session.
Yes, and yes.
Yes, I support repealing right to work and restoring prevailing wage.
Thank you. Rodney, let's begin with you for question number 4. Where would you like to see the minimum wage in West Virginia?
$15 an hour by 2020.
$15 an hour or higher, but I would like to see a living wage and do away with this terminology of a minimum wage.
$15 an hour. What's more, we need to tie the minimum wage to the consumer price index so that we don't let this become a political football where people live in poverty before politicians want to make a decision.
I agree with John. There should be some type of standard. It upsets me that people want to make the minimum wage some arbitrary number. Just imagine this. Imagine a family of 4 making $15 an hour. They're going to bring home $124,000. To me, we want our youth to strive for greatness, and I believe that making the minimum wage $15 an hour is the antithesis of that.
I'm in favor of $15 an hour now and tying it to the Consumer Price Index and having it go up from there.
I'm in favor of the $15 minimum now and obviously tying it to the index.
I voted in favor of increasing the minimum wage. Most people don't realize that we bumped it up to $8 in 2015 and $8.75. I'm in favor of increasing it, but I think I'm a realist. We have to work with the legislature, and I'm in favor of increasing it more. I'm not sure how much.
Thank you. Let's begin with, pardon this.
I'm in favor of increasing the minimum wage until it's a living wage.
Okay, this round, let's begin with Nancy. Do you support the legalization of industrial hemp for commercial and research purposes, such as the production of hemp paper, clothing, and countless other manufacturers?
Yes.
Yes.
I do support it.
Yeah, I support that. I can't understand why the legislature won't go along with it. They must be afraid people are going to smoke it.
I know not only support industrial hemp, I support medical marijuana and the legalization of recreational marijuana. Plenty of ways to raise funds, and to me, it's no different than alcohol and tobacco.
Yes.
I absolutely, wholeheartedly support it.
Yes, I support it.
Okay, thank you. We'll begin with Billy. Question is, would you support or co-sponsor a medical cannabis bill?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
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 Okay.
They just passed one in Pennsylvania. Yes.
Yes, I would support it. I don't care if they smoke it or put it in brownies.
All right. This question will start with John. Question is, HB 4145 allows permitless concealed carry in West Virginia. Do you support repealing this law?
Yes, I do. Obviously, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment and every single amendment in the Bill of Rights, but there are reasonable, sensible restrictions that we may put on things. One thing I'm very passionate about is the Seventh Amendment, that's trial law, and they're up for vetting that. Then why do they only support the Second?
I would not support it. I believe that if you're old enough to go into the Army, you should be old enough to have a concealed weapon. I believe that people have the freedom to do so, and if we don't do it, the bad guys are going to have the guns, and the good guys are not.
I stand with law enforcement opposed to concealed carry without permit.
I have a concealed carry permit, and I feel that only with concealed carry and background check.
I voted against this bill, which the law had been that training was required, and that a license was required, and that a background check was required. And we lived with that law for many, many years, and we should go back to it.
I'm with the law enforcement community on this. I support repealing it. I think the training is important.
I support repeal. The permit process provides a checkpoint that you don't have at the stores that are selling the guns, and so I favor restoration of the permit. I don't care what they charge for them, but I think we need a permit process.
I would love to see the repeal. I stand with law enforcement. I stand with common sense.
Okay, thank you. This question is directed to Michael. I beg your pardon. Barry. Where? Michael. It's Michael. Okay. After the Elk River chemical spill, Senate Bill 373 was passed to protect our waterways. In 2015, Senate Bill 423 rolled back most of these regulations. Do you support returning those protections?
Yes, I will support returning those protections.
Yes, I do. I think it's made us a laughing stock that they would repeal.
Yes.
I was proud to vote and worked very, very hard on Senate Bill 373, and I have to say that we would be so lucky to have Evan. Evan was the architect of that bill. I voted against 423, and we would have a better state if we would return back to the protections of 373.
And I spent a lot of time in Charleston working on 373. I was really proud of that bill. Spent a lot of time last year trying to make sure 423 didn't go too far in terms of what it repealed. It's a complicated question because what we're left with now is better than what we had before the Elk River spill. However, if I had a choice, I would go back to what we had with 373.
What was it, 300,000 people impacted by that spill? I can't believe that they would repeal those regulations or roll back those protections. I would support restoration.
I support restoration. They support the Second Amendment, but they don't support clean water.
My goodness, earlier I talked about our short memory with how we've now passed a right to work law. The Elk River spill happened a year before that. Are you kidding me? You don't remember? I would fully support the restoration.
Thank you. Again with Evan. Last question. There's a phenomenon called forced cooling, which for those of you who are not familiar with that term is effectively a form of eminent domain where a resource extraction company has the right or would have the right to mine resources underneath your property without necessarily your consent. Question is, would you support forced cooling?
I would not support forced cooling. I think that if you want to drill under somebody's land, if you want to take advantage of their mineral resources, you should get their permission.
Completely opposed to forced pooling.
I'm opposed to forced pooling. Again, they want to be the party that defends liberties, but they want to take away your property rights.
Exactly. Eminent domain is such a core principle of this new right of the Republican Party. But if it's eminent domain that will benefit a rich corporation, that's fine. No, I'm against forced pooling.
Well, I have a unique foundation for my beliefs, even though I am a Republican. I am primarily motivated by individual freedom, and I believe that forced pooling infringes upon one freedom, so I will not support forced pooling.
I'm against forced pooling.
I am against forced pooling.
I voted against forced pooling, and the reason we don't have it is because people like Michael joined with Democrats and said no last year and also this year.
And because I'm not really good at reading the fine print, I did skip over a really key question here, so I would like to begin this question with Nancy. Do you have a mic? Do you accept the scientific consensus that climate change is caused primarily by human action?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
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 98% of the scientists agree, and the answer is yes.
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 Thank you, and that concludes the lightning round. We do have 5 minutes for a couple of questions that we received from the audience. First one is, the majority of Americans agree that big money is a corruptive influence on our political process. Would you support campaign finance reform for West Virginia, such as calling for an amendment to overturn Citizens United? I'd like to begin this with Barbara, please.
I don't think West Virginia can do that. The Supreme Court decision about Citizens United was based on the First Amendment, and unless the Supreme Court changes, we're not going to be able to do anything in West Virginia ourselves. I really do not agree with Citizens United. I think it's harmed our country. But we're going to have to, I think we're going to need a Democratic president, and we're going to need some new Supreme Court justices before that will change.
I agree with Barbara. I'm not in favor.
Yeah, I also agree with Barbara. I'm totally against Citizens United. I've seen how that's worked in this campaign.
I also agree. I believe that we do need campaign finance reform.
We need campaign finance reform, or politics will be continue to be the same state where one concerned citizen and their vote is up against billions of dollars in the political process. I would like to pass legislation that would limit campaign finance with the terms of state elections.
I'm for overturning Citizens United and for campaign finance reform, or else we'll get more people accepting money from Don Blankenship. I mean, I'm talking about like after he murdered the miners, still taking it.
We need to get rid of Citizens United. I think we ought to attempt regulation in West Virginia to the extent that would be permitted by law.
I think the Citizens United decision has been a corrupting influence on our politics, and we need to find a way to undo it.
Okay, thank you. Let's begin this question with, we'll begin with Billy. How do you define a progressive? And forward to this, are you a definitive progressive yourself?
I define a progressive as somebody that wants to move the state or country or whatever they're involved in forward. No matter what the obstacles are and no matter what the disagreements are, we must move forward. We must have progress. I consider myself a progressive. I see that we need economic change. We need change in campaign finance. We need change in so many things, and that requires progress. And that makes you progressive.
I define myself as a progressive, and so perhaps I'll give you I think I'm a progressive, and that can serve as my definition of a progressive. I think a progressive is someone who recognizes that not everyone is born into the same situation in life, and that there are certain things that may be done to make sure that all is as level as a playing field as they can be, so that then truly the hardest workers can take advantage of that and work for us.
My definition of a progressive is someone that is open-minded, someone that's able to have an honest conversation about what needs to be done to move the state forward. I believe that we can all be humbled by others. We're all experts in something, and under that definition, I would consider myself a progressive because I am open-minded and I am able to have an honest conversation about what needs to be done to help turn things around.
My definition of progressive is someone who lives in the present and the future and is not looking back to some imaginary 1955. I saw the real 1955, it wasn't all that. And that means that you have compassion for everyone and you understand that everybody